Hello, and welcome to the Fantasy Rewind podcast. I am your host, Dylan Stoll, and I'm joined as always by my friend, Michael Whifford.
Hey.
So today, we are diving back into the Willow series on Disney Plus with episode 2, which is titled...
The High Aldwin.
The High Aldwin. All right. So, as we get going here into the holiday season... schedules are going to be a little bit chaotic, so forgive us for a little inconsistencies with that, but we are back and we're coming hot and heavy with lots of great fantasy content. Hope you guys stick along for the ride. Anyways, before we dive into the Willow, just the quick reminders here. If you want to get in contact with the show, you can send us an email, which is fantasyrewindpod@gmail.com. We're also on Instagram, which is @fantasyrewindpod. We're also on Twitter, which is @FantasyRewind. DM us, message us, tag us, just talk fantasy, and we're happy. All right, so without any further delay, let's dive into the rewind.
Fantasy Rewind. So before we get started in this episode, I did actually have a question for you, Dylan. I wanted to ask you what you thought about the Henry Cavill news recently being removed as Superman, and him deciding then to start his Warhammer movieverse that's going to be coming to Amazon.
Honestly, I am in complete shock when it comes to everything Henry Cavill, because he is such a dedicated nerd when it comes to a lot of stuff,
which is awesome.
Yeah, which is great, but it's so sad to see him do these roles that he does so well, like Geralt in The Witcher, like Superman in the terrible, plagued pit of despair that is the DCEU. Or the DC
they
universe.
Needed to reboot that, unfortunately.
Yeah, and so I honestly don't know what to think about all this Henry Cavill drama and news that's going on. I really like him in so many things. Even when you see him in his fantastical roles, like in The Man from U.N.C.L.E. or anything else that he's been in, he's always so charismatic, always so enjoyable to watch. So I am, of course, excited to watch this Warhammer series if and when it does actually come about and happen.
Now, do you know anything about that franchise at all?
I know zero about that franchise. When I think of Warhammer, I kind of think of the video game series Gears of War a little bit, even though I know they're very different. But it does kind of give me a baseline, like that sci-fi, soldiery in the galaxies type of thing. So I am looking forward to it just because I think it'll make for some cool television.
Yeah, I'm honestly very interested in it because I've never really had a lot of exposure to that universe outside of a few comics I read. And honestly, they were kind of scary at the time I read them because, it has the Space Marines and some of them have chainsaws and stuff. And it was some wild stuff at the time. I don't know what I read or even when I read it really, but I just remember it being kind of creepy and wasn't totally into it, but I'm interested to dive back in now and see what he brings to the table. So
yeah, I'm excited.
Anyway, let's go ahead and let's dive into the Willow episode here. So this was episode 2, The High Aldwin, and we start off here with a flashback, really back in time with Willow talking with Sorsha. He tells her that they need to train Elora Danan, otherwise she might be incapable of magic. And this whole scene was really to set up kind of, I think, Elora Danan's ineptitude throughout the episode.
Right.
Or her struggle, at least. And which is a pretty big trope, right? You're the one, you're the destined one, you're the chosen one. And then it's I can't do anything until, it really counts.
Yeah.
And so we did see a lot of that kind of trope throughout this episode. And even the ending, I, completely called. I was like,
of course, yeah.
She's going to, walk away. And then, because she was trying to grow the seed. And then the seed's going to be sprouting or whatever. But there was a lot of good in this episode. There was some characters, though, that I just don't like what they're doing with them.
Yeah, me too.
So throughout this interaction between Willow and Sorsha, we get Sorsha does not want Elora Danan to leave to learn magic because she She's already done enough. And when she said that, I like kind of looked at the screen and I was like, she was a baby.
Right?
She did nothing.
What did she actually do? Other than
she
inspire
lost her mother,
people.
But yeah. Like, I was just sitting there like, okay, no. There's something else here that's not being said. Like, I don't feel like your reasoning for keeping her away from her destiny makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And how she treated Willow, too, was just so terrible.
So that's exactly what I wanted to bring up. I wanted to just bring up how big of, like, how big of a pain in the butt Sorsha was throughout that entire flashback sequence. Like, just looking at her, I felt nothing but contempt for her. I felt like she was belittling Willow, and for no reason. Yeah,
they're supposed to be such good friends, and she's like, "Oh, don't take any disrespect to this, but you're not a real sorcerer, nor could you ever be one." Like, what?
Yeah. I will say, though, that what they have done with Willow by basically making it, at least in this episode, seem like Sorsha was right. That Willow can't actually do magic. That he is more of a trickster than an actual sorcerer. Like, that...
Well, they did that on purpose.
They did that on purpose. But I think that characterization of Willow is something I wasn't expecting. I was fully expecting him to be a fully fledged Nelwyn sorcerer by this point. At least to the point of his old High Aldwin, who gave him those acorns that would turn people to stone when he threw them at him. But it seems like Willow can't even do the finger test correctly. It seems like he's a blundering fool in the place of a High Aldwin, and that I don't like. Because to me, that is just like keeping him stagnant from where he was in the movie to where he is now.
Agreed.
And that's no growth.
Outside of his visions, yes.
Wait, hold on a second. I want to touch on that. Because if Sorsha has so little faith in Willow to let him train Elora Danan, saying he'll never be a great sorcerer, why does she trust his visions? Or why doesn't she think
because it suddenly came true?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I don't know. The whole thing that they've done with Willow kind of annoys me. You can kind of tell in my voice, but...
No.
Yeah.
And I agree completely, Dylan, because it was like they took 2 steps forward, like with this whole show announcement and everything else, all the scenes we've seen of him.
Right.
And then it's like, in this episode, it's like, okay, 2 steps forward, but almost like 3 steps back.
Right, exactly.
You know, like he has proven nothing except that he's just this no-win trickster. Like you said, he's kind of a joke even to his people, and because they all know what the trick is. They all know the finger trick.
Yeah. It was the crowd calling for, oh, do the finger trick. Not, oh, test her for magical ability. It was do this trick that they know the answer to. Does she know the answer to it? And the answer was no.
Correct. And I think that's really interesting because I think, too, and we're skipping around here a little bit, but we don't know what happened to Willow's wife.
Right. Or
his son. And I think that is going to play a big role into why he isn't doing magic like he should be. Or like he is. Or maybe it's just part of him also being old. We don't know. But there's a couple of things tied into this that I do want to talk about. And Graydon.
Yes.
I think Graydon is going to be a warlock.
Me too.
Or a wizard.
Me too.
I think he had, like, that is sort of his path. Like, he's going to end up also becoming Willow's apprentice, I feel like, at some point here. Because he has all this knowledge. And he's just sort of trying to figure out his way. So I think he's going to end up also going down that journey.
I also think that he's going to end up being a bit of a love triangle with Elora Danan and Prince Eric. Because you could totally see, like, Alora's eyes twinkling. Yeah, the chemistry was there.
Yeah. I'd agree with that. And so let's keep going on here, now that we've kind of dug into that wizard role. So after this, we find out what finally happened to Mad Mardigan. Sorsha sent Mad Mardigan in search of the Chimerian cuirass, which is this armor that's supposed to be super powerful and was going to be the answer. And so Elora Danan wouldn't have to be the Empress and protect the kingdom or whatever, according to Sorsha. Again, doesn't quite make sense. Why is Saoirse trying to avoid this prophecy with Laura Dannon? Don't really know. All we know here is that we also learn the enemy is called the Crone, which we presumably is Bab Marta, just in a different form. That's who I think it is anyway.
Either Bavmorda or like an apprentice or something that worships Bavmorda and wants to bring her back.
Yeah. And then we get that whole interaction where Saoirse is basically, I don't think you're ever going to be a good sorcerer and stuff. And Willow kind of wakes up from this flashback, and because he said some things at the end of it where he was like, well, I'm never going to protect you or help you out anyway. Sort of like, perturbed, and that's why he never came back, I guess, to this kingdom to help them, but it's a moot point at this.
Yeah.
In this, where they are now in this adventure. So then we have the Nelwyn are very excited for Allura. We see Willow's daughter, who is, grown up, and she's definitely more mature, almost more mature than him, right?
She is more mature than him.
And this is where we get our first taste of Kit's sort of feeling towards Allura.
Oh, God.
And this was the interaction that I did not like.
Nope, me either.
I do not like how Kit is just jealous or just does not like Allura for no reason.
She is the kid on the playground who is mad that her friends are happy and liking this other person's new haircut or playing with another person's toy. She despises the fact that they don't worship her as the princess anymore. They're like, oh, Allura Dannon, you're the future empress. What am I, chopped liver? And she's acting so jealous, so moody.
Like a brat.
Yeah, such a brat. That's exactly what she is.
But I mean, it's like in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have got that from her earlier, any interaction with her earlier on. And so I wish they had maybe delved into this just a little bit. Maybe she was trying to talk and just people weren't paying attention to her, and then we could start to get into that a little bit more. But it was really just
it was a sudden shift.
Allura Dannon, and the minute Allura Dannon was named, she was just like, well, I
don't even like you.
Yeah, muffin girl and all this,
yeah.
Trying to belittle her, and I'm just sitting there okay, I don't understand this at all. But I think it also is going to lead into her eventually probably doing something evil at some point in time.
See, I don't. I kind of see... here's what I kind of see happening with Kit. I see Kit being moody, being angry, that she's no longer the center of attention, and that it's Muffin Girl's time to shine. And
Muffin Girl.
That her girlfriend or friend or whatever... Jade is going to show her loyalty towards Allura Dannon, which she does in this episode.
Absolutely, yeah.
And what will end up happening is that Kit will reluctantly come to Allura's defense and then be heralded as a hero for helping to save her, and she'll slowly let down her shield and stop hating Allura Dannon. But at this point in time, we don't see any of that. We just see Kit being moody, not wanting to go look for Allura when she goes and runs away, being like, good riddance, who needs her? Is she even really Allura Dannon? How do we know? Who can we trust?
Yeah.
Just being moody.
Well, I was saying that about her because of what Saoirse had said, is that they had the seed of Bab Marta in them, and they could bring her back, right?
Mm.
So I was just wondering if at some point she's going to start getting these whisperings in her ear, the One Ring talking to her, oh, we could get rid of her, and then she'll be like, oh, my precious, I don't know. Anyway, that kind of leads into though the knights who the Lich is controlling. We find out that, and he is, because Saoirse sends them out to locate Muffin Girl because she knows it's Allura Dannon, so she wants them to recover her and bring her back, and they're more than happy. It's 3 of them. I forget the lead guy's name, but he's the one that was corrupted.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think about that sort of control and how that was explained in this story?
I didn't mind the control. What I did mind was him acting like a zombie and biting or like infecting other
and the
people.
corruption.
Yeah, the corruption.
Yeah.
Like
I agreed.
I would have preferred like something along the lines of where like he like fights them with the sword, disarms them, and then like this like mass of magic comes like out of his mouth or something, like kind of goes down theirs, versus like him like launching like a wild animal attacking them and like turning them that way.
It looks like biting them or
like
something.
I said, a zombie.
Yeah. You don't really get that. And I do think there's something to say in between this episode and the next episode. There are some transitions that I'm just like, that happened really quickly, and I wanted to know how that happened. And we'll talk about that when we cover the next episode too. It's nothing like major, but like it's just like anyway, let's continue on this adventure through this episode. Yeah, I was really surprised that no one taught Alora when she was younger. And we had brought that up, but this was something I had thought of as I was watching this scene play out, and I had to even stop it because Saoirse talked about how both the other witches had passed. But how much longer was this after the Willow movie? So both witches passed in like 16 years? Like, even if we don't go all the way to her being an adult now, I'm sure the what's-her-face that was there still was probably alive for another 6 or 7 years.
Yeah,
and she didn't want to teach her when she was like starting at age 6. And she didn't teach Willow at all. You know, like there's some gaps here with this that I just wish were filled in a little bit.
So what I'll say about Shalindria not like being present and being gone, she never was there during Willow. Like she was in this other realm, wasn't she? Like she kind of was like touching the realm from beyond or whatever. So like
she got sent away.
I think she got banished by Bavmorda or something like that.
Which again, why wouldn't the other witch there bring her back, you know?
Yeah, why wouldn't Rizal bring her back? But maybe she couldn't. Maybe she wasn't powerful enough. But yeah, like
that's fair.
I get Shalindria not being there. I don't see how Rizal would not be involved in training Willow and or training Alora Dannon once she became a toddler. Even if it was for a year or two. Or at least teaching her how to read beyond instructions to bake muffins.
Yes, agreed. And I don't think she would have agreed with them making the decision to just have her be a scullery maid.
Right. That makes no sense. At least have her be like a lady in waiting who's like someone's apprentice or like someone's like handmaiden who is like meant to be like a part of these courtly procedures to gain some experience secondhand maybe. But yeah, it just didn't make any sense for her to be a scullery maid like you said.
Anyway, that was just a thought process kind of a thread that went through my head as I was watching this, is like, why wouldn't, Rizal want this to happen? But neither here nor there. So, or maybe, and maybe we'll get more context later, could have also been a bit of a jealousy thing with Saoirse.
See, I
like
don't
Mad
want
Mardigan
to say that, but maybe.
Mad Mardigan really did adore her, Alora Dannon, that is, as did Willow, right? They had a connection to her as a baby. And you kind of saw this in this episode with Willow, like him remembering her as the baby and like, why isn't she like having the same sort of relationship with me? Well, because you haven't been there, bud, for like 16 years or 18 years, however old she's supposed to be.
Yeah. The one thing I will say though as well is that a lot of this might be because of casting restrictions. The woman that played Rizal is passed away. Then we have Val Kilmer, who's not able to be a part of the series here. So they wrote him out by having him be on this quest. But what if it was something more than that? What if Mad Mardigan really wasn't just sent away to find this breastplate? What if he was sent away from Saoirse because he was being too affectionate to Alora Dannon versus his own children, and Saoirse got jealous? So I think there is something to like keep our eyes open for, like if we see Saoirse like lean into the dark side, like her mom, and like seeing what happens with that, because there really is no logical excuse for what they've done with Alora and like not giving her any preparation whatsoever.
Yeah, it just seems foolhardy, right? Anyway, so Elora Danon runs away from the Nelwyn group, and everyone's out looking for her. Kit's just like, oh, why do we have to look for Muffin Girl and all this? And Jade, or Mims, she's kind of over Kit's crap, which I loved. I was like, she's calling it. She's calling her on it. She's like, you need to get over this. Yeah. So anyway, Kit ends up going off on her own, and she's like, I'm done with this group. I'm going to go find my brother because this is wasting time. This is taking away from finding my brother. Where Elora Danon is literally like, hey, we need to find Eric. That's all I care about.
All she cares
that's
about.
my main purpose right now.
Yeah.
I am the dove, and he is my whatever.
I don't know if she has a
dove?
pet name for him.
No, I guess not. He's my Eric.
Yeah.
But Willow he's eventually told by his daughter, and he gets out Cylindria's wand, and he's like, okay, I will go I'm going to teach Elora. And that when he finds her, he basically like, as long as you listen to me and do what I say, I'll teach you. She's like, yes, anything. So like you had said, sort of this Gandalf-y relationship a bit.
So what I'll say as well is that Willow's teaching method seems to be to beat her over the head repeatedly until she learns the same way like that he did. And his instructional method is not ideal. Of course, Elora is immediately regretful of her decision to say she'd obey Willow and doesn't really. And is immediately questioning him, following her own thing for a little bit. But yeah, she just dives in, saying the same words over and over again. And incorrectly.
It doesn't even seem like she's really trying, honestly.
Yes, and it doesn't even seem like he's really teaching her. She's like, waiter, and he's like, no, water. Waiter, no, water, and doesn't give any pronunciation things. Hermione was a better teacher than Willow seems to be.
Agreed.
It's Leviosa. Right. But stuff like that is what you would expect for you need to enunciate this word differently. And Willow just does not seem to comprehend that he needs to teach her a different way than smacking her with the same word over and over again. That was actually a little bit of a frustrating scene to watch because of how bad it was.
Oh, it was. I was like, okay, this is stupid at this point. It's just showing how inept she is and showing how inept you are.
Yeah. And like I said, them playing down Willow for a fool is what this episode was good at. And that was not what I was hoping to see. It's not what I was expecting or wanting to see after 20 plus years. Or not even 20 years, after 15 years.
I mean, I feel like he should be kind of a hot shot,
Yeah,
know what he's doing. And so I do hope we see some of that, or some reasoning why, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, we do find out here that Borman was Mad Mardigan's Squire. His square. He is a square. No, just kidding. He's probably the coolest character. Mm-hmm. But he was Mad Mardigan's squire, and he went on that quest with Mad Mardigan, and it sort of gives a little context as to why he was probably locked up, aka he came back and Mad Mardigan didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, him, Kit, the entire group has kind of been witnessing Elora Danon try to do these spells
and failing.
Borman, is throwing in some humor there. Jade's just kind of whatever, still respectful to Elora Danon. Kit's just being a jerk.
Mm-hmm.
She's saying she can't do anything and, just being mean. This is also when we had kind of slip over to the soldiers there, converting the other soldiers, which was kind of weird. We find out that Elora's given name was Brunhilde.
Yeah, she's not Dove. Her name for being hidden was Brunhilde. And I'm just like, oh, okay. Makes total sense.
And then they were all like, ugh.
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah. I do have to say, I love that the show is not taking itself too seriously. And I know I said that last episode, but it's really true. They really are going with more of a humorous edge to everything. And I think that fits still. Graydon, he, like you had said, I wrote down here, Graydon likes Elora equals ship, ? But Graydon's very perceptive, and that's where I wrote too. He could be a wizard. He was reading into a lot of different things. He understands these very obscure languages and stuff, and I hope we get into a little bit more with him. Why?
Yeah.
Like it seems like he tried to talk about it once, and he sort of got just talked over. So I'm hoping it kind of comes out later on. But Willow's been having this recurrent vision, and he tells Silas that Laura Dannon has to die. And then the end of this episode, Laura Dannon falls asleep next to where she was trying to get the seed to grow, which was kind of the test for the entire episode. She gets really upset, hits the ground and sort of just passes out from her exertion. And when she wakes up and she's trying to do the spell again, she gets knocked out by the knight.
Can I just interrupt and tell you how much I loved that scene where she is shouting the name of the spell, and then she gets punched right in the face, and I thought that was so funny. Had me laughing a little bit.
I knew something was gonna happen there, but yeah, it was pretty cool how they did that. So anyway, he's taking her away, and then the seedling pops up, and it's turning into a tree.
And I would mention that it's growing much faster than what Willow said it would.
Way faster. It's a full-grown tree, pretty much, probably.
Right.
So
showing that she has, stored potential, basically. And when it finally comes out, it comes out in power.
Yes. And I think we'll see some more of that next episode.
Me too.
Can't wait to talk about that.
No.
But we also, at the end here, have Kit, kind of interrogating Brahmin about explaining about what happened to her dad, basically.
Yeah, Kit's not taking any prisoners. She's wanting every detail from Borman.
Yeah. So, Dylan, overall impressions of the episode?
As much as I was complaining about this episode while we were talking here, I enjoyed this one so much more than the first one. I thought that it really kind of launched the story off, albeit in some ways that I did not enjoy, with some of the decisions that they did. Like I said, making Willow a trickster, a jokester, not anything remotely close to a powerful sorcerer. But I will say that as far as predictions go for the next episode, because I haven't seen episode 3 yet, I'm kind of expecting Allura to almost free herself through the magic. Almost have an outburst, almost like they did with Nynaeve in Wheel of Time, to the show, and kind of free herself that way, while also having the rest of the party chase after her, and then maybe she frees herself by the time that they rescue her, and that would prove to Kit that she isn't this inept muffin girl. So that's my hope, at least.
Yeah, so I enjoyed this episode, and I'm excited to talk to you about next episode.
Yeah, like I said, I'm excited to get into the rest of this series here. I mean, you can already tell that Willow's not going to be one of our favorite things that we've watched, but it is still, it's fun. It is what it is, and it's a fun fantasy romp, and that's kind of what I'm expecting, and I'm hoping that's what I get. So as long as Kit stops acting like a bum and stops being a jerk face,
yes,
then I'll be much more happy with the series. And if Willow actually
continue to flesh out this world,
and
continue to flesh out this
give
world.
me more information about this world. This is in stark contrast to what I am personally reading right now. It's so ridiculously funny because here Willow is this bright kind of teenagery, young adult, maybe even childlike story going on here with lots of hope and fairy tales and stuff, versus the grim dark fantasy of Joe Abercrombie in the First Law trilogy and the First Law world that I'm reading right now. It's so funny, the contrast between the two, and the fact that I can enjoy both series at the same time, I just think shows how much I like fantasy. So are you reading anything right now, Mike? Or
yeah, so I'm still working through the School for Good and Evil series. I'm on book 4 of 6, so I'm kind of chugging along through. I'm about halfway through that book, and I have to say, it's been really neat. I've finally figured out kind of the author's sort of pattern with his writing, and it's intriguing enough. It's definitely YA fantasy, but that's okay.
Yeah, I'm on book
That's okay.
6 of 9 in the First Law world, and loving every minute of it. Highly recommend checking out that if you're not opposed to a little mud on your heroes.
Little mud.
All right, but with all of that being said, this is going to be Two Nerds signing off. See ya.
See ya.